Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing fine, but I do suspect I'm going to have to kill a few people today.
Well, that's just a regular Tuesday.
Amen.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are on to the third episode of season 4 of Black Mirror, Crocodile. An insurance agent investigates a minor traffic incident using a device that manifests people's memories, but one of her witnesses has something to hide. This is the Nordic detective episode of Black Mirror, with possibly what I'm going to refer to as the most John Wagner-esque ending ever. I kind of enjoyed it, but yeah, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Well, it's funny. This whole season, I sort of feel beside myself, and I sort of feel hypocritical. So I acknowledge tons of problems with the first episode, USS Callister, but I find it charming. The second episode is sort of like does everything right, but leaves me cold. But is better written, better directed in a lot of ways. And this episode is a mess in a lot of ways. Has almost no insight into the character. Almost no, that technology is like basically a footnote. It's very minor. It's like grace notes in a murder story. Or as you say, a sort of Nordic noir. And yet I find myself charmed by this episode and its performances and how it's shot. It's just it fills me with I'm just entertained by it.
No, I agree. This is another one where I actually come out of it thinking like I really like this episode. It is a little bit of a mess, in some parts. Like characters, the way the sort of like characters get introduced it's sort of like this episode is, let's check. I think it's like, yeah, it's a 60-minute episode, and this is one where I was like, this is I think one of the first real ones for this was like this could have done with an extra. It could have done with being tighter, but you'd have added 10 minutes to this. I think you could have done more with the characters. Just to throw out there, the main sort of character, Maya, who we meet at the beginning, played by Andrea Riseborough, who is not new to the show. She was obviously the main character in Possessor as well. So, and I do like her. I think she's good in this.
I do too.
Yeah.
She's captivating. She can just like look into space, and I'm like fascinated by her face in some way. Yeah,
she's actually she's got a really interesting look, and I just find her a fascinating actress. So I enjoy her presence. But basically, the story is like I say, on a drive home from a club, two young people end up in a bit of basically a road traffic accident and kill a cyclist, and then hide his body in a lake. And then years later, the young girl played by Andrea Riseborough, Mia, has gone on to become a successful architect and is being celebrated and given awards, given lectures and all kinds of things. And her partner, former partner,
has a 9-year-old son at this point.
Yes, she's gone. I think this is meant to be, this is meant to be, I think, like 12 years later or something. I think from the accident. The 15, person 15, so the person she was with, Visa Rob, has gone on, has now joined, we find out has gone on and joined like AA, and is working through the steps and having to sort of make amends. And part of that is to find out that this person who's been reported missing and was never found, he's going to confess to the crime. But she obviously doesn't want that to happen because that would sort of ruin her life and all her career and her family. So in a sort of odd, I don't know, it's an act of sort of preservation. She ends up killing him in the hotel room in which he has visited her, and hides him under the bed, and then goes on to hide the body, and so on and so forth. Let's take it up to there. So up to that, like this whole opening, then, how because you said it's like quite charming, but especially the way it's shot. This feels like this is, as I said, this is that Nordic noir. I love the way this is shot. I really like.
It was shot in Iceland, and
Yeah.
Iceland is just beautiful to look at. And there's something about like Chris Nolan's Insomnia and these sort of like
Yes.
desolate wasteland. I shouldn't say that, right? Wasteland, but I mean, this sort of like icy expanses, and I mean there are mountains, and it's all quite beautiful, but also
Inhospitable, but like
severe.
Yeah.
That are fascinating. I was a little confused by I mean, even already there's this issue of character, and ultimately there's like no character here, right? It's just which is fine with me. I mean, it's just particular people doing particular things, but okay, so they decide to throw the body off the cliff and weigh it down and throw it into the lake in the very beginning, which seems like okay, kind of a stretch, right? This is going to be the I know what you did last summer sort of thing. And then 15 years later, she sort of pushes him back against the wall, and it seems like kind of an impromptu decision to sort of strangle him, and she just kind of continues doing it, sort of like she's not enjoying it, but she seems to think, well, I've started doing this. We sort of landed this way. I can't have him ruining my life. I have to think about my family. He doesn't have to think about those things. And then it's sort of like, oh shit, now I've got to dispose of this body.
Yeah.
So the problems that are going to be a problem for the rest of this episode are there already, right?
Yeah.
But as you say, it's fascinating.
It is good, and I mean, this is one of those sort of like, it's a snowball effect, isn't it? It's almost like a dramatic farce, like it keeps getting worse. But one of the things you described coming flat from the last episode, that Archangel, which I think was was a good point. I kind of feel a little bit similar at the beginning of this. Like watching this, you go, they hit the cyclist, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like there's no, it doesn't feel. Oh, it looks beautiful. It's shot quite well. The tension never feels like it's there. Like I'm not, and it feels like the tension between Maya and Rob when that incident happens, it's sort of like it's a little bit there. You go, okay, I sort of get it. But then when he confronts her later on, like you don't see enough of her life to feel that she's got something to lose, And so when he confronts her and they have an argument, the argument doesn't feel tense enough to result in her panicking to save the life she's put together. And I think that's the big problem in this opening bit, is like she attacks him and stuff, and it's almost like, as you say, like, was this a decision? Is this a crime of passion? Is this impulse? Like, is it survival? She doesn't feel vicious enough for that. It feels a little flat. And that sort of, is obviously the main thing. And that sort of hinders the end as well, because the ending feels a lot more calculated. But, this should feel more vicious, or the cliche of a woman hitting a guy over the head with a heavy candlestick is there for a reason, because it's like, I grabbed something big and hit him. It's impulse. Do you know what I mean? And you sort of feel like they go, oh crap, what have I done? I just acted out. This feels a bit more cold.
I mean, let's be clear. She's going to go on to have a murder spree. So
yeah, but it should feel like it should feel like she doesn't want to. Do you know what I mean? It should feel like this is like her. I don't know. I don't know either, because I don't know what we're supposed to think, because there's almost no character there. Yeah.
And look, I mean, like No Country for Old Men, there's almost no character there. You know, I mean, you've got a killer, and even most of the other characters are sort of go through their steps and have some motivation, but you could describe that motivation in a sentence, right? It's not incredibly complex. Here, you could describe her motivation for killing him in a sentence. It seems impulsive, but we're kind of just left to think, I'm not entirely sure. And then she goes on, and sort of a part of me kind of thinks, is she kind of just like a cold-blooded person who was going to kill eventually when
Well,
given a provocation?
no,
And
and
that,
the
okay,
evidence, because there was an evidence in the episode that is not the case. Because what I would say is, if they wanted to play her off a little bit, say, Patrick Bateman kind of thing, sort of like, that kind of, that's probably a bit extreme, but she goes on, she does it, she moves on with her life, like she goes home, and then we find out there was this traffic accident. There's a cyclist that gets caught hit by a van out in the street, and so the technology in this episode is the ability to recall people's memories onto like a Voight Kampf machine, basically.
I had the same thought too.
Yeah.
Right?
And they use certain stimulants. So like, it was cold, so we're going to have like the window open. There was certain music playing, so I'm going to play this. And you smell beer because you were near a brewery, and it's sort of they use sense memory to try and reinforce these memories. And so this woman, this Shazia, who's working as this insurance investigator or whatever, is basically working through the steps of meeting with the witnesses and getting them to recall things. And does it all match up? And at one point, someone points out that there was this woman in the window of this hotel, and so she has to track. She tracks her. She wants to track
the
her.
second eyewitness. It's sort of like one witness.
Yeah.
The victim leads to a witness, leads to there was this woman in the window, which is a great shot. The woman in the window. It's
it's great. Yeah. Again,
this totally reminds me of like Blowout, which is like based on that Antonioni movie, like with taking a photo, and just like it's got those like, and that's fascinating, right? I love that movie.
This is why, like, and I'm not going to fix. I'll try not to fix it, but like this is a Nordic noir. Like, it feels that sort of way. I like the fact that it's like it feels well structured in that sense of like, from an investigative point of view. She's like, she isn't just going haphazard. Like the guy says, "Oh, I saw this. Oh, I saw the woman in the room." Like the doctor, sort of one of the witnesses, she says, like, and she's there in the memory. Now we know how, bad memories actually can be, to the extent of like, they're not always admissible as evidence. But she tracks her down because she sees who was in the room. She figures out which room it was and all that kind of stuff. I like all that. Tracks her down and goes to visit her. And so she has then got to work through her memories of that scenario, and she tries to. But the thing is, it keeps coming up with the flashes. Then come up with like the attack, the murder. Now this is where you said, like, is she cold-blooded? Maybe the episode or the director doesn't know, because the way that the flashes are presented are not cold-blooded. They feel like savage, but they feel sort of like there's something more to them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I killed him to get away. Like, it doesn't feel functional. It feels emotional in the way that the flashes come through in her memory that she's trying to suppress.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I'm not suggesting that she's cold-blooded, like she's a sociopath that doesn't feel anything, because she clearly sort of stops after some of the killings and kind of holds her mouth and kind of says, sort of this kind of, my God, what have I done? I need to take the next step now. How am I going to handle this? So she's not a full-on, sociopath or something, but she's also trying at that moment not to think of something, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go up to don't think of baseball, well, you're probably going to think she's trying to train herself not to, but she's sort of panicked knowing what this device is, trying not to think of the two murders, right? The cyclist and the murder just before she saw this. So, yeah, I think she is feeling some panic, but it's a panic of being found out based on, using this recaller. So I don't know that she's, really feeling bad for having killed somebody. Even, and keep in mind, when this Shazia arrives, she says it's about something that happened the day before. So she went back from that conference and like she seems completely calm at this point. I mean, it's a day before and she's pretty chill.
Yeah. Maybe this episode would work better if it was suggested that she was a bit Patrick Bateman.
Mm.
I
think she kind of is, right?
Yeah.
It's not full on Bateman.
No, she hasn't gone the full Bateman, but it's definitely maybe it is there.
Well, she is an architect. Those architects are,
they're
I learned from Ayn Rand. They're
they're a cutthroat bunch. Yeah.
That old cliche, the murdering architect.
But yeah, because obviously Shazir sees it, the flashes, and then sort of like panics a little bit and tries to leave. And then obviously that's the next killing. Sort of Maya catches her and kills her, and then takes the body in.
Well, let's just say that she catches her in the car, breaks the window, and then keeps her in this sort of barn, and can tell that the insurance investigator is lying. And then I think one of the, I mean, I shouldn't say most charming, but winsome elements of this horrible story is that she kills her with a log. And she says, what does she say? She says like, hold still, please, or something like, please. The way she says it is like, clearly she regrets having to do this, but now that she has to do this, it's going to be done, and there's no sense agonizing over it more than I already have. It's quite, I don't know what that says about the character, but I really love that murder scene.
Yeah, no, it's good. It is. It's all very good. And then it goes. She then has to make the decision. It's like the wipe out because then if someone but it's the never-ending chain, is it? This is the ridiculousness of it. Like it's the never-ending chain. Because then she's got to go and she finds out that the husband would obviously know where she was, and so she has to go kill the husband, and then she finds out that Shazia has a baby, and it's sort of left with her. You're not sure at first. And I think you are sort of led to believe because there are several moments to the thing where they give you, there are rumors and facts about the technology in this. You say it is a bit of a greater, it's a bit of a footnote, but it's the point. It's the crux of the ending of the episode. But there is this thing about you need to be conscious of your memories for it to work at some point, and then somebody else says something else that they joke about. I think some sort of animal or something being used, so. But you are sort of like given enough information to go, they're going to use the baby's memories to figure out who the killer is. That's the sort of, I think, the expectation. That's what you're led to believe. And then you do go to the scene and you find out she's actually killed the baby. She's kind of, like you say, in order for her, and she's gone off to see her child's performance. And it is cold-blooded. I mean, that ending is harsh when you have someone stood there going, one of the CSIs like, who can kill a baby like this? And the ending, and I will wrap it up, but the ending is still going, well, we're going to find out, because you then find out that there's like a hamster or a gerbil in the room. And they can extract memories from this animal, and that to me felt like this was like John. That felt like the end of a Judge Dredd story.
Oh, yeah,
like
I get you.
That was like John Wagner going like, I've been brutal for the last like 8 pages, and I'm going to leave you on this cute, this cute gerbil having its memories extracted. It just felt very John Wagner.
Yeah, I can see it, especially in. Judge Dredd comic art style, the sort of, but, we've got no witness. What are you talking about? We got the guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So there was that sort of part of it. But what are your thoughts on that then? This sort of, because her choice to go and proceed with these other murders. I say it's cold-blooded, but
well, it's not though. I mean, it's that same sort of weird line that is drawn, and I think so much of it is the actress is so fascinating,
Mm.
and plays it so cold but also sort of mysterious. She clearly has an emotional reaction. So she sort of sneaks into the house with a hammer and murders the husband. She doesn't seem like she wants to do it again. Like the Shazia, the investigator. But it's sort of like, all right, well, I have to do this, so I'm going to do it, and there's no sense feeling more about it than I already have, right? It seems a line like that. And so then she has a reaction when she sees the baby sort of standing up and looking at
Yeah.
her, where it's like that sort of breath where she's like, oh, like, fuck, I gotta do this,
Well, I
like,
think,
not done.
yeah, like you say, it's cold-blooded, but then there are moments, aren't there? Like, to just step back before the baby. One of the things she does, she lays a towel over the head, over the face.
Mm.
He's in the bath, and she's like hit him on the head with the hammer, and she hits him several times. And as he sort of slouches into it, she puts a towel over his face. So it's like she didn't want to have to see what she's done. Like, she's going to give him some sort of dignity or something. I don't know, but so there is some feeling there. And like you say, yeah, her reaction to having seen the baby is like, like, oh, fuck.
Well, you don't become an important architect without breaking a few eggs, and I just feel like she's protecting her family, and she's a good mom. I mean, who wouldn't do the same thing? I mean, who hasn't killed a baby here and there to protect their family, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I
we've all done
I
it.
don't know. She seems pretty cold, but also not sociopathic, and I like. But as this goes on, obviously I have a dark sense of humor. But as this goes on, I found myself thinking of, the like. Have you ever seen Penn and Teller get killed? Um,
No.
I know it's a very random reference, but at the end, I think they kill themselves, and everybody who stumbles on the scene is so horrified that they also kill themselves, and it's one of these sort of like memes that kind of like
Mm.
you know uh and it's quite brilliant. It was one of those early examples of something like that, where it's like there's an image where everyone who sees it goes crazy or kills themselves or something like that, and it's just going to keep repeating. This almost has that feel to it, where
Mm.
it's or like a simple sort of silly school kid message of like, you tell one lie, it leads to another. You gotta you kill one person, you gotta kill somebody else to cover it up. It's somebody else to cover that up. And but I still sort of like it. I mean, it doesn't really have. I like this technology. It doesn't really have anything to say. But I still just sort of like it based on the shots and the performance.
Well, the thing is, I think this is where, like, say, up until now, like, there's been a lot of, like, we've talked about satire, or like, it's been examples of like taking technology to, the nth point of, trying to figure out, is it good or bad, or how it can be used for bad or whatever. As you said, this isn't that. This is more of a, like, it's a crime story. This is that just so happens to exist in a world where there's this memory technology. That's it. It's just sort of like, again, this feels like, it feels like a short story. I'm saying how long this is. This feels like it would be a short story that exists in this world, and this is the technology. And I could imagine, they sort of do it, and this is one of the problems I sort of have with the episode. Is you want the two parallel stories, don't you? You want sort of like Maya's story, and then Shazia's story, and they're about to cross over, that they're about to sort of collide, and you sort of know that something inevitable is going to happen. That sort of, the only I would say is Shazia is introduced too late, a little bit too late, almost. It almost feels like this needs to. I'm trying to think of an example. If this was like one of those weekly procedurals, which is what this could be, because there is a police detective that comes in later on. But yeah, like, this would be like, a private eye who uses, I don't know, the technology somehow is integrated in that or something. But Shazia sort of feels a little bit brought in a little late. I sort of want her to be a little bit more beleaguered, because I always like it when the detectives are a bit like, rumpled and tired and stuff. And then have those two parallels, like, we know that these two people are going to end up colliding over this, and this technology sort of sits at the center of it.
And then you have that kind of like No Country for Old Men kind of surprise or Psycho, where
yes,
surprise, this main character wanted to kill the other one halfway through.
yeah, you're almost
No,
you're almost expecting heat. You're expecting them to have this long sort of conversation or something, and sort of like meeting of minds. But no, she just gets a log to the face, and that's it. Sort of like
I had the same issue. I had the same thought. But then I thought, if it's presented from Shazia's point of view, we don't get this opening, and we don't get. Then it becomes like she is following, using the recaller, and she gets to the woman, she gets to Mia, and then you kind of have to stop and say, "Here's Mia's story."
yes,
And that feels awkward and unsatisfying in its own way. So I know what you're saying. There definitely is a solution to this that kind of bridges the two, or as you say, maybe follows both stories. But yeah, I kind of understand why it's structured this way.
mm,
It's really Mia's story, and you're introduced to Shazia basically when you need the next victim, right? But that investigation is so interesting that it's
yes,
hard not to kind of want that to be a
more of
bigger
it.
element. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, again, you could, you say you don't have that opening. Well, actually, leave the opening as a surprise. Start with the accident and introduce
Ah.
Shazia, and then, later on, have it. Maybe have three people in the car rather than it's Rob that sort of. You don't know why she attacked Rob. She's attacked and killed Rob, and you don't know why.
Mm.
And obviously, she realizes that she's now seen this accident, and so Shazia is getting closer and closer. Have it be that there's a third person in the car, so that after Rob, she's then going to go. She goes back and sees this other person, and was like, Rob was going to confess and ruin everything for us. And have that person as another victim. Like, she's expecting that person to side with her, and he's like, well, maybe it's time we do confess. Maybe it's time this needs to be put to rest. And it keeps escalating for her, and then you can have that as a flashback or something.
Yeah. I don't know.
Mm,
But I do think that it's interesting to think about, sort of, in addition to Mia's character, sort of how many of these murders are required or necessary at all, right?
mm,
Like, I really like this recaller technology, and as you say, like this acknowledgement that memories are subjective, and they sort of, she says, like, they kind of crowdsource it and combine multiple recollections to get a good idea. But so even the first murder, or the first getting rid of the body, she's not responsible. She wasn't driving.
no.
Now, she could still be charged as an accessory or something,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the prosecutor. It's 15 years later. She helped cover up, dispose of a body. There's definitely a crime there, but it's worth keeping in mind, like, she did not commit the original inciting incident. She was not driving drunk. She didn't hit anybody. Then is it necessary to kill Rob? Now that he's sober, not really. It seems kind of impulsive. He's not going to the cops. His plan is to write an anonymous letter to the wife of his victim from 15 years earlier, who's still waiting.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a good
Well,
point.
that's a compassionate thing, but it's an anonymous letter. You could speak like, look, I've got a family now. I'm a prominent architect. This cannot be traced back to me. You want to unload, you want to vent your spleen, go ahead, but I need to know that this is totally anonymous and is not going to be able to be traced back to you. But it's like he's not, and he seems intent on doing it, but he's not going to implicate her or mention her in the letter. I mean, there's a risk to her, but this doesn't seem really that necessary. The whole killing of Shazia says you have to basically talk to me as an insurance investigator
Mm.
under law, or I have to report it. Okay, well, that's why she agrees to let Shazia in. But it's not clear that that law also requires you to use the recaller device.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not sure. Mia could I don't know why Mia just seems like she's gonna bluff her way through it. But she should not. I mean, dude, why are you putting a device that scans your memories onto your brain when you've committed a murder?
Yeah. Well, consider. I tell you what. Maybe this is one of those things because this is so linear. This episode, it's very linear, and considering it's about memory, if this was in the hands of hand this over to you just talked about Insomnia, hand it over to a Christopher Nolan, Memento style. Maybe this episode shouldn't be linear. And maybe you could have two parallel stories. Again, maybe it shouldn't be something that. Have it start with them finding the body in the lake, and her going these two almost then Mia going to Rob and going how the hell did they find what the fuck is this? How did they find the body? And then him confessing and saying, "Look, I'm now sober. I've wrote this letter. Don't you worry. No one can trace it back to us." And they're saying don't be so bloody foolish. You've done this without consulting me. You didn't think about what could happen to me. And I just think there's better ways of doing this episode. Have it in almost you could cut it up so you can have this idea of memory, and maybe even have it unclear as to who was driving the car. Can't remember. It's unclear. 15 years ago. We don't know never have it as totally clear as to who was actually driving 15 years ago, what actually happened, or who distracted the driver, what happened for them to hit that thing. It's unclear. Can't remember. But we know it happened. But
well, in this more ambitious version, I would like big portions of it to be told on the recaller's recordings.
Yeah.
Where it's right, we've acknowledged this is subjective and it's grainy and it's sort of left to you as the viewer to be right. But having said that, right, I mean, at this point we're doing that thing
I
again,
know.
and then it's not a Nordic noir,
No, it could be.
anymore.
I think it would still be similar. Yeah, I know what you mean. But
I mean, I don't know. I like what it is. It's definitely so limited as an episode. And really flawed and whatever. But I'm with you that there are these elements, these moments where you feel like that theme of memory is so palpable right under the surface and so strong and so resonant, and yet seems so subordinated to the just noir elements.
Homage. It's an homage to that sort of Nordic noir, much I think, like you say, we said that the US Callisto was that sort of Star Trek kind of thing. This feels like this sort of kind of homage. But unfortunately, it's sort of in doing so, it kind of hinders the thing it's trying to get at a little bit. As you say, it's sort of like you say, it becomes subordinate to the stylings of it, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, I think it is saved by there is a lot to talk about. There's just Andrea Riseborough as Mia is just so good in this.
Yeah. I mean, look, the image of her standing at the window is just, I mean, so captivating. It's one of those images the Polish-French film Red, where, it's just, there's certain images like this that just stick in your head and you're just that is such a beautiful image, fascinating image, and she looks so inscrutable.
Yes, well, and there's several moments like that, aren't there? They sort of have that, her being stood framed by a window on several occasions throughout the episode. She's again it comes back to this thing of seeing through a window. I mean, this is almost Hitchcockian. This is almost Rear Window. What did you see from that window? How has it been interpreted? Is it the right way? Is it the wrong way? I love that. I think some of the stylings of this are great. Like it looks and it works really well. So yeah, I'm you know, I am enjoying all that.
Yeah, same here. Two quick things about it. One is that production. I love the school production. Like she's just killed a child, and
Yeah.
she's like playing it off cool, right? And you think, God, the pain of not telling anybody,
Mm.
right? But she's stoic. She's a very stoic character. And then that production apparently is of Bugsy Malone, a musical
Yes.
about gangsters, and the lyrics are just so spot on as a commentary. That was quite charming.
Well, have you seen that film from the
No,
80s? Have you not?
no, never.
It was a big piece of my childhood. Yeah, it's a really young Michelle Pfeiffer.
Mm,
And the whole film is basically the story of Bugsy Malone, who's a 1930s gangster, and it's a straight up gangster story,
mm-hmm.
but told with kids. And instead of like Tommy guns, they fire like I think custard and cream pies and stuff. Like but it's a musical as well, and it's the
Right.
soundtrack's incredible. But that song at the end is in the film, and we could have been anything that we wanted to be. Da, 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 is what their big sort of song and dance number at the end, and it is like it's followed like it's been a big shootout at the end of the film. They're all covered in cream and custard and stuff, and then everyone stands up and sort of they sing this thing, and it is weirdly sort of like, yeah, they should all be, if these were real guns, like they'd all be dead. And it is this idea of like, you know, it's an odd film. It's an odd
What
film.
could I have been? Right. We're
Yeah,
gangsters. What
yeah,
could we have been if we hadn't gone down this terrible route?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good film, but it's also a really interesting choice for the end of this this
Well, and
episode.
it's so innocent,
Mm,
right, as you're describing it, but also so haunting in this different context of like everybody's like, ha 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 ha. This is such a stupid little thing. But of course, the lyrics are saying, you've just murdered a kid, right?
yeah,
And when you kill somebody, and I think this is part of what haunts us about death, especially death of the young, not just children, but anyone, is also that when you kill somebody or when somebody dies, you kill everything they could have been.
yeah.
Uh,
The
you know,
potential of it all. Yeah,
right? And that's part of why it's so sad when somebody, not just a kid, but on a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old who's
but
still
that's sort of
vibrant and thoughtful.
but you can see that as being again the point of this episode is that thing of like not just the child at the end, but like you don't know the age of that cyclist. I think he's sort of shown to be I think quite young. So there is this thing of like 15 years later that happened, and then 15 years later she's become this architect and this great success.
Mm,
So what that thing of like we could have been anything that we wanted to be. Well, she became an architect and a success. That cyclist could have been doing the same.
right.
She's led a life that person could have had. Like she's that not that she stole that potential because it was obviously Rob that was driving the car, but that potential was robbed or stolen.
Well,
And
and
there's
they
this
don't have a magic gem that steals the potential, literally,
no,
right?
but
I mean,
you know
it's
what I
just
mean, yeah.
but to get back to one of the themes about the last episode, this you can also understand these decisions, right?
Mm,
And ethically, we feel more that was about a mom who you know knows this is troubling, but makes decisions to protect her daughter. Um, Here, this is somebody who, sure, it's not right that this person got run over, but they're dead.
mm,
The question is now, do I sacrifice my life? Or
mm,
not? Um, and right, I've got a kid, I've got a husband, this person, every step of the way, she's putting herself and her kin, her family. I mean, this is Breaking Bad, like, except I did it for my family. Um, and she kind of really does. So yeah, it's like it's sad that these other people, especially the Shazia and that whole family. I
mm.
mean, she's a what is a serial killer? The family annihilator type. I mean, at this point, she's a family annihilator.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really sad. But it's also dramatizes this tension between our responsibility to our kin and our friends, and also to society and the general public, which is always a key tension in not just literature, but also just morality and ethics.
Just to think about morality, I want to just throw one thing in about sort of like we've said about this thing. You say about she's a family destroyer. And we've obviously said about the fact there's a child killed in this. We talk about the loss of potential. One of the key things you said about her being a mother that's just protecting her family. It is interesting to note that when this was originally written, the character of Mia wasn't a woman. It was two guys in that car. So he was supposed to be a male lead. And she was actually coming in. I've just been reading the trivia. She came in to audition for a different part, and
wow,
she won them over, and they changed the way that the episode went in order to sort of like to give her the lead. If this was a man, if this was a male lead, would this episode play different, do you think?
Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, I think that we would be more likely to say, she was always crazy, right? This guy was, always crazy. Maybe he's protecting his, his child, and his family, but, I think we're tougher on men, in some ways. Obviously, men have privilege and we go easy on them in others, but, yeah, I mean, generally, my instinct is that if it were a man, we would be more likely to say, I have less sympathy for him. He probably was psychotic already. He could say it's about his family, but really he's going around murdering people. But I think that it's partly because it's so different to see a woman in this role as sort of coldly killing people and being upset with it, but feeling they have to do it, that it's so unique. It's so different that we, at least I, am more, struggle to sort of, find that sympathy or want to.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's that thing that the thing is, I would say, I agree. It's sort of like, if it was a male, like I'd be saying much more of like the Patrick Bateman kind of influence if they played it the same. I think it comes, it comes down to that final scene, doesn't it? I think that final kill, let's say the baby kill, is sort of the crux. If that was a male, if this was a male lead, and they committed that crime, there'd be much more of a like, oh, this is just brutal, this is insane, like, that sort of thing. There'd be that kind of thing. But because it's a female lead, and we have that sort of idea of the mother, the protection, it sort of feels even, I don't know, it's oddly worse because of that. It's a great choice because it makes this episode much more sort of like interesting in that way. And I think she is so good. Final point though, up until now, I've been, we've had like in this season in particular. I want to go back. The episode names have all been like, yeah, I get it. They all make sense. This is the first one, Crocodile.
Yeah.
I was a bit like, I'm not entirely sure what it means. So one of the things, this is really reaching. The way that the poster for this episode is set up, like you have Mia's face there, and it says Crocodile underneath it. The two O's are sort of resting just under her eyes, and it does make me think of like, is it about crocodile tears? This idea of like faux. We've talked about this like faux emotion, this idea of sort of like, is it something like that? I don't know, but it's an interesting. Again, I could be miles off. I don't know. I could be sort of like, there'll be someone going, no, it's just because, we like crocodiles. I don't know.
Well, I did look this up, and other people have pointed to the possibility of the crocodile tears. Although I don't think they made the point you just made about the poster for the episode. But apparently, the quote unquote real answer is that crocodile came from something that was in the original script that was cut.
Right.
And
there you go. That makes so much.
We'll just leave the title.
That just makes so much more sense. It'll be a talking point if anything else. That's what they've come to. Fair enough.
Well, this will be on the Black Mirror trivia in the bar later.
Yes. At the end of the episode, at the end of the entire run, yeah, it'll come on the pop quiz. Okay. Any final thoughts then for Crocodile?
No, I think she's definitely a mama grizzly, if not a crocodile. And yeah, I find it a depiction of white affluent motherhood. That is you could definitely run a sort of like Get Out analysis of this. It's not a great episode, right? But it is but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is one where I think that balance between this is sort of strikes the balance between I think the press two. I think there are there's stuff in this that really works in the same way as sort of Archangel. There are scenes that are just really well done. The directing is spot on. Some of the sort of like the cinematography using the Icelandic landscape and this thing of framing her in windows and all these other bits and pieces. It's really good. But as you say, sometimes the episode's really messy and the characters are really ill-defined. And but then the killings and sort of some of the bombast is actually really good as well. Like I like that ending, as I said, that sort of like John Wagner-esque ending, which sort of made me chuckle a little bit in a dark fashion. So yeah, it strikes that balance for me between those two. I think this is it's a solid episode, but it's not a good episode, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Anyway, if that's it, then we have run to time. So, ladies and gentlemen, what were your thoughts about Crocodile? Did you shed any crocodile tears for this episode or for the child killed at the end? Let us know what your thoughts are. Is this a good episode or is it a poor episode? Reach out to us at Pod Time Space on it might even exist. Sod it. It might not exist by the time this episode comes out. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We will be on other platforms. Or leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Any on your podcast catcher, any of your platforms. 4 stars, 5 stars, preferably, but any feedback is welcome. And of course, if you really like us, go check out the Patreon links down below. And we do all kinds of stuff in there. Really working our way through the Twilight Zone, the original Rod Serling Twilight Zone, the original Black Mirror, and other bits and pieces on there as well. But for now, Julian, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we shall see you on the next episode.